I found most interesting was basically that they're forking the ETH proof uh, or ETH proof of stake chain, right? And I thought that was really interesting because he had mentioned how, if other things come down the road, such as sharding, that all that could be upgradable into PulseChain, right? And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool because I've been watching the roadmap of Ethereum for a while now. Well, essentially since I've gotten into Hex, and I find sharding to be really interesting. And I think it's worth just doing a really quick kind of rough overview of what that looks like.
Yeah.
So let's see here. So this is just kind of some stuff that I got from the Ethereum website, right? Their homepage, and some interesting stuff that sharding does is it allows, instead of doing like all the data on one transaction that is being done like distributed via the nodes, right? It actually breaks data down so each node can hold a portion of that data, and thus it pulls the workload off of just having one node dictate it, if that kind of makes sense. So the sharding process is basically, so it's splitting a database horizontally to spread it out, so that sharding will work synergistically with layer 2 rollups by splitting up the burden of handling the large amount of data needed by rollups over the entire network. So this is supposed to reduce network congestion and increase transactions per second. I know what a lot of people are probably thinking right now is like, when PulseChain comes, like none of this is going to be an issue, right? It's already going to be super fast, and the network isn't really going to be congested because there's just a lot more throughput in it, right? But I think another important thing that you also need to keep in the back of your mind is that Richard Hart has also mentioned, like with mass adoption of PulseChain, like we could see the same thing happening that we saw happen to Ethereum, right? Like the more popular it gets, the price goes up, which is awesome, right? Because all of us are going to be making tons of gains off of the PulseChain price going up in all the other coins in the ecosystem. That's great, but as that price goes up, then the cost of the what's it going to be called? Beats? Is it beats on PulseChain? The lowest increment of a pulse is a beat, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's been a long time since I heard the nomenclature, but
yeah. So I think you're gonna have to pay in beats, and as the value of those beats go up, then so does your transaction cost, right? And over time, like if we're expecting this mass adoption into PulseChain, like I am, future upgrades are going to be very important. And now that PulseChain is going to be able to get those, they can pick and choose. Like they don't have to take all the upgrades, right? Like they're going to be completely in charge. Like Richard and his dev crew is going to be completely in charge on what upgrades hit the market and what doesn't, right? And I think this is absolutely amazing. I mean, he already has the best devs, right? He already has a culture of just building things that just work and they do exactly what they're supposed to do. But to be able to add extra open source code when they need it to be able to launch faster, like or to implement faster, I think that's just amazing. I think that was something that went well under the radar of most people as they were watching the stream on Saturday. So I just wanted to emphasize that a little bit. What do you think about all that, Max?
Yeah, I mean, when he said it, it really didn't sink in for me until like, oh wow, okay. But then I gotta admit, my first thought was, and of course afterwards he says, "Doesn't matter, it's not going to delay or anything." My first thought was like, oh god, there's another thing that we just had to change, and now, I mean, there's obviously going to be some sort of delay. Now we don't know where we're at in the process right now, but obviously you can't just use the thing without there being, I hope that it was super planned, that it was like right up to it. Okay, we know where they're going to fork. We know we're going to use the new code. He just didn't tell anyone about it. But again, not that it matters. Not that again, I don't care when it comes out. Blah blah blah. But like, it's not going to using ETH versus BSC is not going to come out faster. I'll say it that way. So that was my only thing. Was like, okay, I know this is good for the long term. I know this is the right way to do it. But I'm just like, I just felt for everyone who's like, everyone who's like kind of catching their breath, thinking about these updates, thinking of when things are going to come out. They're going to like, they just probably sunk in their chair a little bit, but whatever. And then Testnet V3, that was something I've been talking about for a few months now. Like, obviously there's going to be Testnet V3. you can't have all these changes. You can't have the security testing, all the different security testing that happened, and just be like, whoop, I think we're ready to go. I think there's no way we get this long. We're waiting, and Richard's just gonna be like, well, I think it's cool. I think we should push it. Like, I knew there's always gonna be a testnet v3, or a 2B, or whatever it was speculated on a while back. But yeah, it's interesting because the validator, no more voting and stuff like that, unless something changes, unless we implement the features ourselves as far as that goes. That's going to be, I wonder, and I don't think this will shake out for probably a little bit longer, but just knowing how that affects, I know a lot of people in the community were excited for, the delegated portion and having their validators being voted number 1 and number 2 and all this stuff. The gamification around that, I thought that was pretty fun. Not that it would last forever or anything, but that's going to take a minute to kind of for people to get their heads wrapped around too. And David Feeder did a video yesterday where he talked a little bit about this too. So it's interesting. I'm not sure. I guess it's good news again long term, and but it's just kind of a little bit of okay, we're gonna be here for a while. I'm gonna be here for a while anyways, but I don't think it sped the process up. I'll say that.
Well, I think that would be assuming a lot to say that it's gonna give any sort of meaningful delay on the launch. I'm still in the boat of when it launches, it needs to be the best product that we could possibly have at that point in time. And then at that point in time, if there's an issue with delegators, that'll be sorted out. That'll all be sorted out. If that's what he wants, he can do that. That's not a problem. And then going forward, we just got to make sure that we're keeping our eye on the prize here, right? And that's going to be 100% uptime, right? So we got to make sure that they're going to make sure that it's the best product that they can put out at that point in time, and they will allow upgrades, real good upgrades as time goes on too. That will hopefully be just flawless and will just synchronize just right. So
totally agree.
I wouldn't worry too much about it. And then also keep in mind, so back to the testnet, when V1 came out, from V1 through V2B, at least at the very start when V2B first came out, the communication was pretty excellent between the devs and the community members on GitLab, right? There was a lot of conversation going back and forth. There was a lot of bugs found, a lot of bugs fixed, a lot of merge requests, that sort of thing. And I don't see any reason why that line of communication doesn't ratchet right back up again once V3 launches. When V3 launches, there's going to need to be a lot of communication between anybody running a validator and the core team, right? So that's going to be necessary. Yeah. We're going to see there's going to be a lot of things brought to light before we see mainnet because of that. So right now we could try to predict what we're going to see on mainnet, but really we could just wait. Just when V3 comes out, we're going to get a lot of our questions answered.
Definitely. That's going to be, that's going to a lot of fire under everyone. V3 comes out, then we know we're a lot closer than we used to be. Like I said, short term, kind of be nice if there was another delay, but long term, definitely the right move. We'll be able to take all the upgrades from E2 2.0, all that stuff. So yeah, I think it's great long term. It's just when you're watching it and you're like, oh, updates, PulseChain, they're like, oh, we're switching an entire new thing, and we knew how long it took for the last thing to switch over. And I'm like, not the best news in the moment, but you got to look at it from perspective of when this stuff comes. I mean, there's a lot of people, again, I see it in the comments all the time, people complaining, oh, where's the refund, Richard, give us a refund, all this stuff. I'm like, when it comes out, what are you going to think of all the things you said? What are you going to think of all the, all the just dreariness and all the gloominess and all this, it's never going to launch, all this stuff. It's going to launch. And when it comes out, you're going to feel real bad that you were just hating on it so much. It's going to be amazing. So anywho, can't force the community. I like that too. He did talk about that. That is something that's just the most impressive thing. Nothing I've ever seen is this community. So
yeah, I mean, he was number one thing in crypto security and then strong community. And, one thing I quoted him out here, I'm more impressed with the community than I am with flawless software, which is pretty sweet. He was being real and genuine when he said that too. So I think that's awesome.